I live in a small town south of San Francisco along the Pacific Ocean. This small place is called Pacifica. In the 1920s, there was a railway built from San Francisco to Pacifica, and people from San Francisco would start to build weekend cottages in the small valleys along the way. The most popular one was called Valleymar, where I live now. In the 1920s, there was almost no trees in the valley, and the early people building homes began to plant the place with trees. Now the entire valley is filled with trees, and the last tree to be planted at the far end of the valley is this huge Monterey pine that is right next to our home. When we were remodeling the basement of our home, we found this slab in the original staircases to the front door, and engraved in the slab was the name Last Pine, to indicate that this was the last pine planted along the valley. We dragged that slab out to the front gate where the last pine stands, and it's now the welcome to our home in Pacifica. And in this home, we've raised 3 children, including our son, Tywin. Tywin's about 23 years old, an adult, and as an adult, he decided he was going to get a tattoo. And so, for his first tattoo, anyway, he decided to get one that said Last Pine. I used to work for the Whole Earth Catalog. In fact, it was my first job, which was a catalog for do-it-yourselfers from the 1970s. The font that the Whole Earth Catalog is written in, the title, is Windsor. And you may recognize that because that's the same font that Tywin used for his tattoo. I decided to make a sign for the house in this font. So I printed it out at large scale, and then I pasted it onto some pine board, and then I was going to take a router, and by hand, I was going to route out the letters and make my sign. So I apply it, glue down the printout, and with the router, carved it out. And I have to say, it was not necessarily the cleanest job, but once I sanded off the paper, it looked pretty good. So I painted the inside with black, did a couple of coats to make sure I got everything, and then removed the excess paint from the surface. And my intention was to paint the rest of the sign red. And I was going to do that by covering up the black recessed letters with dry sand. So I filled all the letters with dry sand and leveled it off as best I could with just a piece of plastic. And then once it was cleaned off, I added some red paint, spray paint. And as you'll notice, I kind of unexpectedly found that the spray paint blew off some of the sand kind of onto the surface. So I needed to do a second coat. I needed to clean it a little better, which I did. I gave a load of sand, and then was able to paint it a second time, and that second coat actually worked pretty good. And so that was I thought, a pretty clever way of doing a recessed 2-color board where the letters were engraved. So once the paint was dry, it was just going to pour out the sand. And then unexpectedly, it didn't come out as easy as I thought. The paint itself formed a kind of a film over the sand. I had to knock it really hard. to get it to come out, and I even had to kind of clean it around a little bit with a stick. But once I got all the sand out, it actually looked pretty good. And as you can see, it's really, really nice. Then I had Tywin apply the sign in its rightful place, just above the slab. And we could then have an homage to the person who planted this tree, the family that made the slab and the house around the tree. It's a homage to my days at Whole Earth. And, of course, now it's a little bit of a nod towards Tywin's tattoo. I really liked the way the sign came out. And there it is in front of our house in Pacifica. Thanks.